Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso, Chief Security Officer at AT&T, and I want to talk to you today about practical methods for securing cloud. I want to start by telling you about a project that I worked on about 2 decades ago. It involved going down and visiting a team down in Washington. I remember the program management office was in that area. Went down, was there to talk about security architecture, and I remember the lead, the program manager for this big project we were working, came in, she sat down and asked what we were talking about, and when we said architecture, she said, what's the big deal? You put passwords on accounts, you put antivirus on computers, put the networks behind firewalls, what more is there? And I got to tell you, at the time I was kind of dumbfounded because I didn't have much of an answer. I think 20 years ago, there was not much more to it than just those 3 issues. But we all know now that we've seen advances in each of those areas. Certainly passwords have transitioned to multi-factor. I hope you're looking at that. I think if anybody's still relying on passwords for things that are critical, you got a little bit of a problem. We all use them. We know that end users love passwords, so there are cases where the threat is, is low enough that you use them. But for the most part, when you're dealing with critical services, you've got to move up to multi-factor. We all know what's happened with AV. The concept of behavioral signatures or behavioral profiles have kind of taken over the idea of matching up a bunch of descriptions, we call them signatures, for viruses and other kinds of things. That's become kind of out of fashion. In fact, if you want to get money for a startup, the first thing you say is, look, I swear I'm not using signatures, I'm using behavioral profiling. So we've seen that transition. But the third thing, putting networks behind firewalls, man, we still do that. Everyone still does that in 2014. It's the basic canonical approach that we use with our auditors, that we use to establish compliance, and that we use to protect our data. Be fine if this was working. Again, I'm not even sure I'd be talking to you on this video if the perimeter were working just fine. We're protecting our data, we could stop attacks, we could stop nation state, all the different types of things that are the great themes of 2014 and 2015 in cybersecurity. If we could do it, we're fine, but we can't. It's not working, so we need to do something else. Now, the analogy I use all the time is that if you're leaving money in your house on the kitchen table and there's nobody coming in and out of your house, you're fine. Your kids are small, people are not coming in and out. But as the kids get older and their friends are coming and they're wandering around your home, you've got to move your wallet off the kitchen table, right? And where do you move it? You move it to something that's kind of reminiscent of cloud in a computing context. So my basic message here is that I believe that if you follow the right set of security principles, you can not only duplicate but improve significantly on the protections you've got with your perimeter. And let me tell you some of the tools that I think are in there. Now, first off, obviously, you need an identity and access management scheme for protecting who's got access to what in and around cloud. If you've got a super complex one running in your enterprise, you can potentially federate onto the cloud, or maybe you build a new one. I mean, every 10 or 20 years, you ought to think about refreshing something that's overly complex. Maybe it's time to rethink that identity and access management infrastructure in cloud. So that's one. You're going to need that. Second is you're going to have a rational approach to cryptography. So encrypting data at rest and in movement. I think for years we've been sort of wallowing in our inability to do PKI properly. Well, this is an application that I think is tractable. Generally, you own your data. I know that there's third parties and suppliers and so on, but if you have that ownership of data, I think it's going to be more tractable to do a good, solid encryption scheme in the cloud, especially if it's scattered. So that's a second tool. A third is something that the Gartner group refers to as a cloud broker. I think they work real nicely. This is conceptually like a man in the middle of establishing or opening tickets as you request access to certain data. It's a nice way to do access management, wonderful way to do RBAC, and it's one-stop shopping for your auditors and the compliance managers. They can kind of look at the broker and see what's being allowed and what's not and where things are moving. It's a real nice concept. Another technique that we've got is the idea of containerization, where from the client to the server in the cloud, you can establish some sort of an encrypted session. You'd like to be able to do it in a BYOD context. You'd like to be able to tear the session down and overwrite memory in a convincing enough way that you're sure there's no residual left on the device. A lot of real nice ways that you can do this kind of session-based management of a client touching data in the cloud. Tons of companies in that area. It's easy enough to find them on the internet. And then finally, the concept of runtime virtualization, meaning at build time, when a cloud object is created, think virtual machine, if you're virtualizing the compute, you can virtualize security around it as well. You can build firewalls and intrusion detection systems that are native to protecting that cloud object. In AT&T, we have a project that's all about that. It's working out just great. Really, really excited by the idea that you create something dynamically, you specify memory and compute and all the different resources you need in a VM, and then guess what? What are the security parameters you want? And virtually and on demand and in real time, you build that environment. All the threat hooks will pour out into a SIM. All the protections are native to that dynamic object. And when the object goes away, that security, that instance goes away. Really exciting stuff. Look, this is where I think we need to be. And back 20 years ago, when I was sitting in that office, and this program manager said, gee, passwords, AV and firewalls, what else is there? My answer today would be multi-factor authentication, behavioral profiling, and substituting perimeter with a good, solid cloud security architecture. So I hope this is helpful to you, and I hope as you move your own data to the cloud, you'll keep some of these protections in mind. Have a great day.